If you could speak with someone you've lost, who would you choose?
Every house carries a story, stitched together over centuries by the souls that never left. Some reveal themselves as a shadow, a whisper, a chill in the air. At Latham House, those echoes linger. Will's trainers pounded the cobbles until he was at George's side. He tried to slip his cold fingers into the old man's hand. George turned, feeling an icy breeze brush across his skin. But he could not feel the boy's touch, nor see Will looking up into his watery eyes. "He'll see me one day," replied Will, with a nod and a cheeky grin as he returned to her side. They stood and watched as the old man turned the key and let himself into his home. Then, cold hands linked together, they walked over to the bench at the edge of what was once the old stable yard of Latham House. "Tell me a story, Jess," pleaded Will, "about the old times." Jess smiled down at the boy, putting her arm around his shoulders and pulling him into the folds of her long skirts. She set about describing the hustle and bustle of the stable yard and the magnificent house of times gone by. Will listened intently as Jess revealed a yard filled with sounds and energy of characters she had known in life who had never left in death. As she spoke, the people and colourful scenes slowly appeared before them, like magical, misty, ethereal memories. Figures emerged from darkened corners and darted from place to place, going about their daily work. Each gave a nod or wave to the two souls sat on the bench, as the yard gradually materialized in all its glory. The modern green front doors of the renovated bungalows slowly faded, the frames once again filled by bare wooden doors that led to what was once the mess room, stranger's stable, and loose boxes. Across the yard, the large arches of the carriage house lost their modern windows, revealing the fine carriages within through large open doors. Noise began to drift through the air. Footsteps, chatter, and movement. The sounds of a lively workplace on a damp, quiet evening. "Looking grand, Jess," called Richard with a grin, as he sprinted across the cobbles towards the building that in the past housed the stalls for the many horses owned by the occupying gentry. His fast-moving shadow had been witnessed by many of the current living residents of the property. A fleeting glimpse out of the corner of the eye, footsteps on the cobbled yard, a shake of the head in denial. But the moment was brief, fading almost as instantly as it appeared. Not a memory, but a ghost of a memory. Jess gave a coy smile before returning to her tale, explaining how Richard and the other grooms would have started their day early, at 4 a.m., feeding, grooming, and mucking out the horses. The stable boys would tear about the yard, keeping it clean, heaving the hay bales to each stall, and carting the manure to add to the pile at the far end of the yard. And the carpenter's pin hammer would rhythmically tap, the woodworkers busying themselves with repairs to the hall's ghostly furniture, as well as creating new pieces and providing the much-needed sawdust for the horses' bedding. "I miss those times," said Jess, looking mournfully at the hive of activity around them. Most tales of death are sad ones. Jess's, however, was not. Her young life was cut short in the very spot where she now sat, after a horse being led across the yard had reared up on its hind legs, forelegs kicking out wildly, catching Jess on the side of the head, a blow from which she never recovered. The last moments in her body were filled with the face of the sweetheart she was waiting to meet, Richard, who gripped her hand as she slipped away. So bereft was he that within a few weeks he was found hanging from a beam in the groom's quarters, his intention to join her, destined to forever smile shyly at each other in that moment where love was beginning to flower. Their feeling of love, new love, where butterflies and anticipation are paramount, was often the feeling that would overcome current residents of Latham House, in the now modern courtyard, and made for a favourite place to sit in contemplation with a book or thoughts. The current residents came from many walks of life. The hustle and bustle of one big household working together had been replaced by many families living their separate lives, coming together only a couple of times each year for a summer barbecue and again for a Christmas celebration. But one thing tied them all together: the unseen people that walked among them. The people that had once been a vital part of the running of the estate. The ones who found they could not leave. Will's eyes took in every scene that materialized before him with relish. The stories his grandfather had shared, which had been passed down by his own father, had included all the characters that busied themselves in and around the yard and house, but never with such clarity. Across the sands of time, Jess and Will continued to walk the grounds and sit on the bench at the edge of the old stable yard, though they had no concept of the time that passed. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and months to years. And still, Jess told the tales of the old community of Latham House. The current residents came and went, worked, lived, and moved into the apartments and homes, and moved on when the time was right. And still, George would return to his home each day. And still, Will would try to greet him, hold his hand, and long for the old man to see his face. "He doesn't look right," said Will one evening as George rounded the low building at the edge of the yard. "He will be fine, my wee lamb," Jess replied as George stopped and rested his frame against the grey brick. He reached forward and gripped the back of the bench to stop himself from falling, and then edged around until he could sit, dropping his paper on the seat. Will plonked himself next to the old man, looking up into his face, a face that was so familiar to him and held such kindness. George closed his eyes, his breathing coming in short gasps until it rattled in his throat, and then slowed to a stop. Reaching over, Will let his fingers slide into the old man's hand, feeling the roughness of the skin and fading warmth. George blinked his milky eyes open, and sitting forward out of his body, he turned his head to the boy, his face illuminated with joy, for this time he could feel his tiny hand in his own and see Will's face. "Hi, Grandad,"